morning, good day, good afternoon, good evening, good night, wherever you live, wherever you are. Today I continue The Last Elf with chapter 12. The dragon looked annoyed. He was very old, and it isn't easy to decipher the expression of a dragon, particularly if it's a very old dragon and it's the first time you've met one. But it was obvious how annoyed he was. The wooden door was gigantic, as high as a half-dozen trolls standing on each other's shoulders. It had opened with an impressive noise, to reveal a huge hall in which clusters of stalactites and stalagmites stretched out amid one another, creating intricate networks of light and shade. The dragon lay at the center. Light came from above, filtered by dozens of little windows, sealed by thin sheets of amber that bathed everything in a light glow. What evil ill-stat strangers has befallen you? Why trouble ye my calm with foul uproar? The dragon's voice took them somewhat by surprise. They gave a start, then they looked at each other, trying to establish which of the three was the best place to reply. The hunter was the first one to pluck up the courage. Well, my noble lord, I am a man and he is an elf. Not everything is perfect in this world. The dragon commented, apparently unimpressed by this information. Not all creatures can be born dragons. The best of nature's forms, he concluded. For a moment the hunter was perplexed by this interruption. He took a few deep breaths and then began again. He, the little elf, is called Josh Krunskwakeljonastring. This information didn't seem to impress the dragon either. The sign clearly states that spitting is forbidden, the dragon replied. I wasn't spitting. That's his name. His father's name was Gornan Ben Mayagult. Everyone has his own name, returned the dragon, less and less impressed. There was an embarrassed silence. Destiny seemed uncertain, and fate had clearly been lost along the way. Josh Krungswakeljonastring tried to get the conversation going again. We've read a prophecy that spoke of you for no excellency. Who was it framed this prophecy? The dragon asked. The humans of the second runic dynasty in the city of Delagar. Toilsome, indeed, is the art of saying sooth, and never have the humans got it right. They who gave credence to scribbles on a wall have always been thought doltish. Now, messiahs, pray trouble me no longer, by which I mean that I wish you to depart. The big door closed again. The din was so deafening that a few little stones rolled from the top of the pinnacle, and the four had to dart quickly aside. What on earth's he talking about? The hunter asked. He said the prophecy was stupid, and that we have to go, the little elf said wearily. He dropped onto a large stone. The dog approached and licked his face. The man was stunned too. He squatted on the ground with his head between his hands. Why was the dragon so sure that the prophecy was written on the wall? The woman asked finally. She was only still standing. It would be much more likely to be on a parchment, a wooden panel, a shield, an icon, the places people normally write. The woman bent down, picked up a stone, and hurled it with all her strength at the door. Hey you! She yelled with all the breath she could muster. Open up, unless you want us to break it down. Have you gone mad? Do you want to die? The hunter asked. No, quite. contrary. I don't want to die. We are at the top of a mountain that you can only reach by a river that is too fast to travel back against its current, and which leads to the most deadly waterfall anyone's ever imagined. If there is a way out, it leads from the lair what its name in there. So it's worth trying, or else we'll be up here for all eternity, and the crows will pick up our bones. And at this point, there is no turning back. We are here, and in some way, we will confront the dragon. She turned toward the door once more, and this time she struck it with the little elfish hatchet. Splinters flew in all directions. Hey! She shouted again. I'm talking to you! The door opened once more, this time only by a few inches. How durst ye? The dragon began. You know about the prophecy as well, don't you? I did hear something, the dragon admitted. But that has no significance. Are you afraid? The woman asked. Is there something in our coming that frightens you, that might put you in danger? Something that we don't know about. It's strange that you're not curious, sir. More curious, the little elf corrected. The woman glared at him. It's strange that you're not more curious. And what about the mythical hospitality of dragons? You haven't even invited us in. Mein venerable age, the dragon began by way of self-justification, and the pain caused me by the bones of my feet. Don't be afraid, said the woman. Don't be afraid, snorted the hunter. Who of? Us? He'd just have to sneeze and we'd be like charred corn cobs. Don't you understand? He's old, tired and alone, and he has no powers now. It's the dragon that's afraid of us. Don't you understand anything? The woman was truly irritated. Don't be afraid, she repeated to the old dragon. There was a long silence. The only sound far in the distance was the waterfall. Then the dragon started to cry. It was a series of convulsive sobs, which turned into the whimpering of a frightened puppy. I'm beginning to understand how the dragons died out, snorted the hunter. He narrowly missed a kick in the shins, and finally the door reopened, fully this time. The hall was enormous. Among the stalactites and stalagmites, veils and veils of cobwebs caught the amber light that filtered through the windows, giving everything a magical appearance. The room was filled with dense smoke. The heat was stifling, and the luxuriant vegetation of golden beans stretched across the floor and climbed up the walls. At the far end were myriad openings leading into other halls that were just as full of veils and veils of soft cobwebs, on which spirals of smoke swirled amid full, round bean pots. Where does the smoke come from? Asked the little elf. The dragon's lamentations grew in both intensity and volume, and the stalactites began to tremble with the vibrations of its shriller cries. The hunter began to look anxiously around him, and for the first time since she had entered the grotto, the woman too seemed frightened. The dog resolved the problem. He approached the dragon and licked it, whimpering gently, as dogs do when they are comforting someone. The dragon stopped crying. He slowly raised his big head and looked the dog in the eyes for a long time. The dog wagged his tail. The dragon calmed down. His breathing returned to normal. The stalactites stopped trembling. Trustworthy, faithful, whenever he needed him. There he was, Fido. It was quite definitely a perfect name for the dog. The little elf began to stroll about and look around him. Everything was quite extraordinary. The dragon was huge. His scales formed complicated and sumptuous spirals of pink and gold, although some of them were worn and in places turning grey. Many of them were missing, knocked out by ancient wounds that had healed into trench-like scars, in which one's hand could have disappeared. His feet had claws that must have been sharp at one time, but which now were worn and blunt. The dragon's head rested on his front paws, and when he moved, a slight shiver ran through his body. He was an old one, a poor creature whose strength was gone. The woman was right. Yorsh went on strolling about. He had come close to the deepest part of the gilded cavern. What he saw here took his breath away. At the bottom there was a mammoth crater, from which intense jets of steam escaped fast as lightning. Toward the equally mammoth hole at the very top of the cave, and hurtled outside to form the plume of smoke. It was a volcano. A steam volcano. Grandma had told him about it. And the little elf remembered the afternoon when his grandmother had told him about the hot heart of the world, about volcanoes and earthquakes. She had drawn pictures on the beaten earth floor of the shack, because there had been no parchment for some time. And she had shown him how the hot heart of the world gives heat no volcano to volcanoes. She had also heated over a candle flame, a bottle half full of water, and had shown him how the heat made the cork come out with a little plop and a puff of steam. He had split his sides, laughing, and his grandmother had laughed too. And then she had brought out 3 nuts that she had been saving for a special occasion, saying that it was always a special occasion when people laughed. It had been a good idea, too, because afterward they hadn't had any more nuts, but also his grandmother had never laughed again. So there had been nothing to celebrate. The little elf woke from his memories and looked at the column of vapor rising up in front of him. He knew what it was. A long well that communicated with the hot heart of the world, the center of the earth, where the fire from which the vapor was born still burns. Ancient underground rivers come into contact with heat and turn into steam that rises and rises until it emerges from the earth as a plume of cloud. That was why an enormous cloud always hung above the mountain. It was born out of the mountain. In fact, it came from the center of the earth, and it just passed through the mountain. Then the steam reached the sky, where it was freed and spread out until it blocked the stars from view. Clouds, and then more clouds, and more, and more, and more, blocking out the stars for years. Clouds and more clouds, rain and more rain. This is a volcano, isn't it? The little elf seemed suddenly to have regained the power of speech. A steam volcano. The steam comes from the center of the earth. It comes out here, rises up in the obscure sky, and becomes a cloud that turns into rain. He looked at the others. His face had brightened. Now he knew. That's why everything's so dark, and it rains, he explained delightedly. You just need to move that huge stone there and block the hole, and everything will return to the way it was before. No more mud. Apart from anything else, this stone seems to fit neatly into the crater. Its shape matches the hole exactly. The little elf continued to observe, walking around the enormous crater and the enormous rock. Yes, they really do match. Even the ridges in the rock line up. The little elf turned to face the dragon. That rock there blocked up the crater, and you moved it. You opened the volcano. The little elf's tone was filled with fury. How could you do something so stupid? It's caused years of mud and rain. It's causing years of mud and rain. Stay away from this jaws, the hunter said to the others. You do know what if he that if he's you do know that if he spits will be burned to a crisp. But the dragon didn't seem to have any intention of killing them. Clearly, dragons are only terrible when they're young, and this one seemed to be very old. Very old, very tired, and in despair. He started whimpering and crying once again, and several of the stalactites trembled. The dog whimpered too, in an attempt to provide comfort. The woman stayed calm. She went over to the dragon and even dared to stroke one of its paws. It doesn't matter. We'll sort everything out now. Don't be afraid. But you've got to explain to us or we won't understand. Tell us everything from the beginning. The sobs began to subside. The stalactites stopped wobbling. The dragon sniffed a few more times, then began his story. But how the story goes, we hear in the next chapter, chapter 13. But for now, I say, have a good morning, good day, good afternoon, or good night, wherever you are. See ya.